your seats. Thank you. Good morning. Secretary Linda Baldos, Department of Labor, Mr. Joseph De Bruyne, Mr. Philip Jennings, thank you for your very well-researched speech, Mr. Christopher Nang, Mr. Jose Mali Jr., of course, Mayor Alfredo Lim, Mr. Tomoyasu Kato, Mr. Noriyuki Suzuki, Mr. Ernesto Herrera, former Senator Bobby Tiñada, other participating trade and employers unions, Officer in Charge Akiko Sakamoto, ILO, delegates of the Third Asia-Pacific Regional Conference of the Union Network International Global Union Asia-Pacific Regional Organization, Trade Union Solidarity Support Organizations, members of the academe, fellow workers in government, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and welcome to the Philippines. I think we all know how labor conditions around the world differ greatly from one another. But as the theme of this conference points out, we all live in a post-financial crisis world. It is only appropriate that we make full use of the avenues of dialogue available to us, to share our country's respective conditions and experiences so that we may ultimately learn from one another and move ourselves closer to recovery, if not prosperity. So let me take this opportunity to share with you the situation in this country and our experience and perspective in dealing with it. From the moment we stepped into office, our battle cry for our labor sector has always been clear and simple: make things better for labor in a responsible manner. And by better, we mean turning working abroad into a choice as opposed to the necessity that it has become for a lot of our countrymen. We mean allowing the common Filipino worker to have enough resources so that when he comes home, tired from a long day at work, he may be rewarded with time with his family, a well-deserved rest, and a full plate for dinner. But we realize that we also have to do this responsibly. We have to balance interests. We have to make sure that the investors who give jobs to our people continue to operate here. We have come across a number of challenges in pursuing this vision. The labor market here, much like the labor markets of other countries, is complex. Balanced and responsible solutions are not always easy to come by. This is why our administration is continuously striving to come up with mid and long-term solutions, as evidenced by the Philippine Labor and Employment Plan 2011 to 2016 of our Labor Department. This plan is a vital part of achieving our countrymen's shared aspirations for the Philippines. Inclusive and equitable growth that increases employment levels, improves the quality of employment, expands access to employment opportunities, and advances dialogue processes towards more mutual or collective gains. Simply put, it's a country where no one gets left behind, where everybody not only pulls his own weight, but also links arms with his fellow man so that everyone from every part of the economic spectrum moves forward on the road to progress. This is the vision we have laid out for the future. Perhaps what makes it a greater challenge is that while we are striving to achieve this, we are also making certain that the government is flexible enough to respond to the labor sector's pressing concerns. Allow me to share with you some of the things we have done in this respect. When many of our workers expressed their unease about the rising prices of commodities, I called on the regional wage boards to release their decisions as soon as they could efficiently do so. Their decisions brought about an increased daily allowance for many of our workers, which will help them cope with inflation and the inconsistency of the world oil market. This in contrast to a country where every Labor Day, management and labor would have a back and forth, with the solution always being no increase in wages. This year, labor got a wage increase. Perhaps it was not as large as they wanted, but it was big enough to be felt by our workers and small enough not to stoke inflation. We also remain focused on creating enough jobs for our citizens in the here and now, and a large part of this is addressing the labor market mismatch here. For example, at this point in time, there are nurses passing their board exams only to be met by a job market that has no room for them. On the other end, we have BPO companies sprouting left and right, and we do not have enough workers at certain categories with the skills to be employed in this ever-growing industry. What did we do? We appropriated around 700 million pesos in this year's budget to the Technical, Educational, and Skills Development Authority for their training for work scholarship programs. This will equip Filipinos with the knowledge to excel in various industries with high labor demand, specifically the BPO industry. The Department of Labor and Employment also plans to upgrade PhilJobNet, which is the government's job matchmaking system. The new and improved PhilJobNet will also be the labor market information portal of the Philippine government. And the people at the Labor Department believe that it will be able to house supply and demand database systems such as the National Skills Registry System. The registry system will allow workers to list their skills and qualifications to become more visible to hiring employers, effectively streamlining the processes for both employees and companies. Additionally, it is hoped that this will plug the mismatch between the 50 to 60,000 jobs available and the lack of workers to fill up those positions left vacant on a monthly basis. Our administration also faces the added challenge of having a large percentage of our labor force working overseas. For example, most of us are also aware of the troubles in the Middle East and North Africa, and this issue directly affects the hundreds of thousands of Filipinos working in those regions. Their families must have lost countless nights of sleep fearing for their loved ones' safety, while at the same time having the possible loss of their livelihoods at the backs of their minds. TESDA and DOLE likewise worked doubly hard to soften the blow by ensuring that repatriated OFWs were prioritized in skills training programs so that they could find work elsewhere or even start their own businesses. Perhaps it is also an apt time to point out the success of our maritime labor sector. As of 2009, 25% of maritime workers in the whole world were Filipinos. This is proof of how well managed the sector has been. The skills match the demand, and we have been able to dominate the market. This is an example that we want other sectors to follow, and we will put in the long hours needed to replicate the success of this sector. We are hopeful of the continued cooperation of management and labor in strengthening their respective industries. There remains so much for us to do to improve the conditions for our labor sector. Those of our citizens who are unemployed do not feel that the unemployment rate has gone down from 8% to 7.2% from April 2010 to April 2011. Whether the unemployment rate goes down by 10% or by a tenth of a percent, those without jobs still need to make a living. I am not disappointed with the progress we have made in the past year, but I will never be content until those working beyond our shores remain there by choice and not by necessity. Our administration will not rest as long as there are those among us who toil all day without any prospect of improving their lot in life. We will not rest as long as there are those who sweat but remain hungry with a skewed and diminished sense of self-worth. We will not rest until we complete the drastic turnaround that we began when we stepped into office. We know that the Filipino people stand alongside us, that they share our responsibilities as we move towards our shared aspirations. Before I end, we just want to emphasize, in all the problems that we are confronted with, there is but one central thought. The greatest asset this country has rests on its people. Thank you. Good day.